The transport shuttle descended through layers of shimmering energy fields that protected Viridian Prime, the massive space station that served as the heart of galactic civilization. Commander Marcus Kane pressed his palm against the viewport, watching as the station's impossible architecture came into view. Spires that twisted through multiple dimensions, gardens that floated without gravity, and at the center of it all, the Hall of Bloodlines. Marcus had spent 3 months preparing for this moment. He carried humanity's genetic records, achievement logs, and cultural documentation in a secure data core that hung heavy in his pack. Earth had waited 70 years for this appointment. 70 years of being treated as the galaxy's newcomers, the species too young to matter. The shuttle docked, and Marcus stepped onto polished floors that seemed to be made of solidified starlight. Other species moved through the grand concourse around him. He recognized some from his studies. The towering Kael'thari with their 6 arms and silver skin, the crystalline Jethik who chimed softly as they walked, even a Vorum diplomat whose gaseous form swirled inside an environmental suit. None of them looked at him. To them, he was invisible. The Hall of Bloodlines rose before him like a mountain. Its door stood 50 feet tall, carved from a single piece of black material that seemed to absorb light. Ancient symbols covered every inch, representing the 43 species that had proven their genetic worthiness to join the Council's inner circle. Marcus approached the entrance platform where 3 council members waited. Elder Thask of the Kael'thari stood in the center, his multiple eyes reflecting centuries of experience. To his left floated Harmonizer Quill of the Jethik, her crystalline body refracting the light into rainbow patterns. On the right, contained in a shimmering sphere, was Speaker Ven of the Voruum, Commander Kane of Earth. Elder Thast's voice resonated through the translator implant behind Marcus's ear. "You come to petition for humanity's entry into the Hall of Bloodlines." "I do, Elder." Marcus removed the data core from his pack and held it forward. "I bring proof of humanity's achievements, our genetic diversity, and our contributions to galactic peace." Harmonizer Quill chimed, a sound like breaking glass. "Your species has existed in its current form for merely 200,000 years. The Jethik have remained unchanged for 6 million. What worthiness can such brevity claim?" Marcus kept his voice steady. "We've advanced from stone tools to faster-than-light travel in 10,000 years. Speed is not wisdom." Speaker Ven's voice bubbled through a containment sphere. "You rush forward like children, touching everything, breaking much. Your genetic code shows constant mutation, instability. You are not yet finished evolving." "Our adaptability is our strength," Marcus argued, but he could hear the desperation creeping into his voice. This was going wrong. He prepared for skepticism, but not outright dismissal. Elder Thask extended one of his long arms and took the data core. He didn't even look at it before passing it to an assistant. "We will review your petition, Commander Kane. But know this, the Hall of Bloodlines is not a participation award. It is reserved for species who have proven their genetic stability, their evolutionary completion, their worthiness to guide galactic policy." And who decides worthiness? The words escaped before Marcus could stop them. The 3 council members went silent. Around the platform, other species stopped to watch. Marcus had just questioned the council directly, something junior diplomats simply didn't do. "The Hall decides," Harmonizer Quill said coldly, "as it has for 10,000 years, as it always will." Elder Thast gestured toward the massive doors. "The Hall will now render its judgment." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the symbols on the doors began to glow, cycling through colors that Marcus's eyes couldn't quite process. The light spread across the surface like water, reaching every carved symbol before fading. The doors remained closed. "The Hall of Bloodlines rejects humanity's petition," Elder Thask announced. "You may attempt entry again in 50 years, should your species survive that long." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. 50 years. An entire human generation dismissed with a wave of 6 alien hands. He stood frozen on the platform while other species returned to their business, already forgetting about Earth's humiliation. Marcus turned to leave, his boots heavy on the star-polished floor. Behind him, he heard the council members already discussing their next appointment. Then the hall screamed. It wasn't sound exactly, more like reality itself cracking. Marcus spun around and saw something impossible. The Guardian, the 30-foot statue that had stood motionless beside the doors for 10,000 years, was moving. Its stone eyes blazed with light that hadn't existed moments before, and it was looking directly at Marcus. The Guardian's first step shook the entire platform. Marcus stumbled backward as the massive statue descended from its pedestal, each movement accompanied by the grinding sound of ancient metal waking from an impossible sleep. The entity stood 30 feet tall, carved from a material that looked like star metal but pulsed with internal light. Around the platform, chaos erupted instantly. Species scattered in every direction, their voices creating a cacophony of panic in a dozen different languages. Elder Thask's 6 arms spread wide in what Marcus recognized as a defensive posture. Harmonizer Quill's crystalline body flashed through colors that meant alarm. Speaker Ven's containment sphere wobbled as the gaseous being inside swirled frantically. "This is impossible," Elder Thask breathed. "The Guardian hasn't moved since the hall's creation. Security, activate all defensive protocols." Kael'thari guards rushed forward, their energy weapons charging with high-pitched whines. They formed a barrier between the Guardian and the council members, their aim steady despite the fear Marcus could see in their multiple eyes. The Guardian ignored them completely. Its massive head turned slowly, scanning the platform with eyes that glowed like twin suns. Beams of golden light swept across the assembled species, analyzing each one for a fraction of a second before moving on. Then the beams found Marcus. Time seemed to stop. The light washed over him, warm and searching, and Marcus felt it penetrating deeper than his skin, deeper than his bones. It was reading him somehow, pulling information from parts of himself he didn't even know existed. His DNA, his memories, his very essence was being examined by something impossibly old. "Fire!" Elder Thask commanded. Energy bolts lanced toward the Guardian from a dozen weapons. They struck the ancient entity's chest and shoulders, exploding in brilliant flashes. When the light cleared, the Guardian hadn't even paused. Where the weapons had hit, there wasn't a single mark. The Kael'thari guards backed away slowly, their weapons still raised but useless. The Guardian took another step toward Marcus. Then another. Each footfall sent tremors through the platform. Marcus wanted to run, every instinct screaming at him to flee, but his legs wouldn't obey. He stood frozen, watching the massive entity approach. "Commander Kane, get away from it!" someone shouted, but Marcus couldn't move. The Guardian stopped directly in front of him, so close that Marcus had to crane his neck back to see its face. The entity raised one enormous hand, and Marcus flinched, expecting to be crushed. Instead, the hand moved past him, reaching toward something behind the massive doors of the hall. The doors groaned. Then, for the first time in 10,000 years, they began to open. Light poured out from inside, so bright that species across the platform shielded their eyes. Ancient mechanisms rumbled to life. An impossible way of the doors swung inward, revealing the hall's interior. Marcus caught glimpses of towering archives, holographic displays flickering with data, and corridors that seemed to extend into infinity. Then the Guardian did something that made every species present gasp in shock. It knelt. The massive entity lowered itself before Marcus. One fist pressed the ground in what could only be a gesture of respect. Its glowing eyes dimmed slightly, becoming less fierce, almost gentle. The Guardian's mouth opened, and it spoke. The voice was deep and resonant, like the grinding of tectonic plates, but the words were clear. They echoed across the platform and into the open hall beyond. "You are the last." The words were barely above a whisper, yet they carried weight that physical sound couldn't explain. Marcus felt them vibrate through his chest, settling into his bones. Around him, every species had gone completely silent. What does that mean?" Marcus managed to ask, his voice shaking. The Guardian didn't answer him directly. Instead, it turned its head toward the hall's interior and spoke again, this time in a language Marcus didn't recognize. The words sounded ancient, each syllable carrying power. Inside the hall, systems that had been dormant for eons began activating. Holographic displays erupted into existence, showing star charts and genetic sequences. Archive terminals blazed alive, scrolling through data faster than any I could follow. The entire hall seemed to wake up, responding to the Guardian's commands. Elder Thask found his voice first. Guardian, explain yourself. By what authority do you open the hall? By what right do you grant this human access? The Guardian rose to its full height and turned to face the council. When it spoke again, its voice carried an edge that made even the eldest species present step back. By the authority of the builders, by the right of the first law, by the command written into my core when the galaxy was young. The Guardian's hand gestured toward Marcus. This one carries a mark. The genetic signature cannot be denied. What signature? Harmonizer Quill's chiming voice had lost all its earlier confidence. What mark? The Guardian's eyes blazed brighter. The mark of the progenitors. The Guardian moved deeper into the hall, and Marcus found himself following without conscious decision. Behind them, the council members rushed to keep up, their earlier authority forgotten in the face of something far older and more powerful than their political structures. The interior of the hall stretched impossibly far, defying the physical dimensions Marcus had observed from outside. Walls of crystallized data rose on either side, each surface containing the genetic records of countless species. The Guardian led them past all of these familiar archives, heading toward a section at the hall's deepest point that Marcus could see had never been accessed. Dust that had settled for millennia swirled in their wake. The Guardian stopped before a massive sealed door. Ancient symbols covered its surface, different from anything in the outer hall. The entity placed its palm against the metal, and the symbols began to glow. The door split down the middle and opened with a hiss of escaping atmosphere that had been trapped for ages beyond counting. Inside was a circular chamber. The Guardian gestured, and the room came alive. Holographic projectors activated throughout the space, filling the air with images that took Marcus's breath away. Stars. Not the stars as they appeared now, but as they had existed billions of years ago. The galaxy turned slowly above their heads, but it looked different, younger, more chaotic, and scattered throughout it were markers indicating something Marcus didn't understand at first. The progenitors, the Guardian's voice rumbled. The first children of the previous universe. The hologram shifted, zooming in on a single world that glowed with impossible cities. Beings moved to projection, tall and graceful, with features that struck Marcus as hauntingly familiar. They looked almost human, but refined in ways that suggested millions of years of guided evolution. They didn't evolve naturally? Elder Thask asked, his voice barely above a whisper. They were survivors, the Guardian explained. When the universe before this one died, a handful of beings found a way to carry themselves forward into the new cycle. They became the progenitors. And they were alone. The hologram changed again, showing progenitors spreading across the empty galaxy. Wherever they went, they left life behind. Marcus watched as world after world bloomed with genetic experiments, each one carefully designed and nurtured. They seeded everything. Speaker Ven breathed. All of us. All of you, the Guardian confirmed. The Kael'theri were designed for strength and longevity. The Jothic for crystalline perfection and memory. The Voruum for adaptability to extreme environments. 43 successful species, each crafted with purpose. Marcus felt dizzy. Everything he'd been taught about galactic history was wrong. The proud, ancient species that looked down on humanity were themselves created beings, children of an even older civilization. The hologram darkened. The stars began to flicker and die at the galaxy's edge. But they were not alone in the new universe, the Guardian said. The Devourers came from the spaces between realities. They consumed everything. Matter, energy, even the fabric of space itself. They had no form, no purpose except to feed. The projection showed chaos. Worlds disappeared. Stars were snuffed out. The progenitors' beautiful creations were swept away like dust before a storm. Marcus watched fleets of unimaginable size throw themselves against darkness that simply absorbed them. The war lasted 10,000 years, the Guardian continued. The progenitors won, but the cost was everything. Their civilization was reduced to ruins. Their numbers fell from trillions to mere thousands. The hologram showed the final battle. Weapons that could tear holes in reality itself. Defenses that reshaped space. And in the end, a small fleet of progenitor ships fleeing the devastation, carrying the last survivors. They knew the Devourers could return, the Guardian said. They knew their created children, you, were too young to face such a threat. So the last progenitors enacted a final plan. The hologram zoomed through space, following one ship as it traveled to a remote arm of the galaxy. The ship approached a blue-green world covered in primitive oceans. Earth. Marcus felt his legs go weak. No, that's not possible. The Guardian turned to look at him. They encoded everything into a final seed. Their consciousness, their knowledge, their genetic legacy. They planted it in the most abundant life on that world and let natural evolution do what conscious design could not. They let time and chance create something new, something better. The hologram showed billions of years passing in seconds. Simple cells became complex organisms. Fish crawled onto land. Mammals rose. And finally, humans emerged. You are not descended from progenitors Marcus Kane, the Guardian said. Humanity is the progenitors, reborn through natural selection. You are what they became when they surrendered control and trusted the universe to guide them. Elder Thas collapsed, his 6 arms trembling. This is impossible. We're older than humans. We've existed for millions of years. You are older, the Guardian agreed, but you are created artificial. Human beings are the only natural continuation of progenitor evolution in this galaxy. They are the last of the first. The hologram shifted one final time, showing the edge of the galaxy in current time, and there, barely visible, was darkness beginning to spread, and the Devourers are returning. The silence in the chamber lasted only seconds before chaos erupted. Elder Thas demanded proof. Harmonizer Cool insisted the data must be corrupted. Speaker Ven simply retreated into his containment sphere, his gaseous form swirling in what Marcus recognized as distress. A dozen other council members who had followed him into the chamber began shouting questions and accusations all at once. Marcus heard none of it. His eyes were fixed on a hologram showing darkness spreading at the galaxy's edge. The Devourers, coming back after billions of years. And somehow, impossibly, he was supposed to stop them. Guardian, Marcus's voice cut through the noise. You said the progenitors left defenses. Where are they? The ancient entity gestured, and a new hologram appeared. It showed a network spanning the entire galaxy, thousands of installations connected by threads of energy. Most were dark, dormant, waiting. The defense network requires progenitor genetic authorization to activate, the Guardian explained. Only someone carrying the original genetic markers can wake the systems. Without activation, they're simply ancient ruins scattered across space. And I have these markers? You do, but activation comes at a cost. The Guardian's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. The process will burn through the progenitor genes in your DNA. The ancient code will consume itself, providing the authorization signal. You will survive, but you will be changed. The connection to your ancestors will be severed forever. Marcus absorbed this information slowly. He would lose something he'd only just learned he possessed. A connection to beings who had existed before his entire species evolved. The weight of it pressed down on him like physical force. How long do we have? Elder Thas had regained his composure, his tactical mind already working. The Guardian consulted systems Marcus couldn't see. The Devourer Vanguard will reach Viridian Prime in 18 hours. They move faster than they did in the Ancient War. They have learned. 18 hours. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Can your defenses stop them? The network was designed to push them back into the dark spaces between realities. It cannot destroy them, but it can force them to retreat. For a time. For how long? The Guardian paused. Unknown. Perhaps centuries. Perhaps millennia. The Devourers are patient. They exist outside normal time. A Kael'thari security officer rushed into the chamber, his 6 arms gesturing frantically. Elder Thas, the Outer Defense Fleet, is reporting contact. Something is tearing through our sensor networks at the system's edge. Elder Thas turned to Marcus. You must activate the defenses. Now. Wait. Marcus held up his hand. His mind was racing, trying to process everything. Guardian, you said I carry the markers. Do other humans have them too? All humans carry fragments of the progenitor genetic code, but you're the strongest expression currently alive. The markers are most complete in you. Marcus felt an idea forming. But if all humans have fragments, could the network recognize multiple authorization signals? Could humanity activate it together instead of through one person? The Guardian's eyes flickered, processing. The network was designed for individual authorization, but the progenitors never anticipated their rebirth through natural evolution. The system might accept distributed authorization if the collective genetic pattern is sufficient. You don't know if it will work? Harmonizer Quill's chiming voice was sharp with fear. The scenario was never tested, the Guardian admitted. Another security officer burst in. The Vanguard has destroyed our outer defense stations. They're moving toward the habitable zones. We're evacuating the civilian populations, but there isn't enough time. Marcus made his decision. Guardian, take me to the Defense Network's control center and get me a communication link to Earth. Emergency priority. The trip to the control center took mere minutes. The Guardian moved through the hall's hidden passages with Marcus running behind. They emerged in a chamber dominated by a throne-like structure covered in alien technology. Conduits ran from it into the walls, floor, and ceiling, connecting to systems buried throughout the station. Marcus sat in the throne and immediately felt connections attempting to interface with his nervous system. Pain lanced through his skull as dormant genes began to wake. Earth Central Command. A voice crackled through the communication system. This is Director Chun. Commander Kane, we're receiving impossible reports about progenitors and an alien invasion. Please confirm. Marcus gritted his teeth against the pain. All of it is true, Director, and I need humanity's help. I'm sending you genetic sequencing data. I need volunteers to provide genetic samples immediately. Everyone who can reach a medical center in the next hour. For what purpose? To save the galaxy, Marcus said simply, and to prove that humans aren't meant to be gods. We're meant to be something better. Through the pain, Marcus saw the first memory that wasn't his own, a progenitor scientist, making the decision to surrender control and trust evolution, choosing humility over certainty. He understood now why Earth had been chosen. Outside, the Devourers drew closer. The first wave hit Viridian Prime's outer defensive ring exactly 14 hours after the Guardian's warning. Marcus watched the holographic displays as 3 Keltheri destroyers simply vanished, consumed by darkness that moved like living liquid through space. The Devourers didn't attack with weapons. They simply existed in reality bent around them, breaking down into raw energy that fed their endless hunger. Evacuation is 40% complete, Elder Thas reported, his multiple hands working communication panels with desperate speed. But the civilian transports are too slow. We'll lose millions. Marcus sat in the control throne, his body screaming as progenitor genes activated throughout his system. Memories that weren't as flooded his consciousness. He saw the ancient war through the eyes of beings who had fought and died billions of years ago. He felt their fear, their determination, and their final acceptance that they had failed. Earth is responding, the Guardian announced. Genetic samples are being collected at 7,000 locations across your homeworld. Through his connection to the defense network, Marcus could sense the dormant insulation scattered across the galaxy beginning to stir. They recognized him. They were waiting for his command. But would they recognize humanity as a whole? The Guardian didn't know. Marcus was attempting something the progenitors had never imagined. Another alarm shrieked. The Devourers had broken through the second defensive line. Commander Kane, this is Director Chun. His supervisor's voice came through crystal, clear despite being transmitted across half the galaxy. We have 3 million volunteers already. Medical centers are overwhelmed. People are lining up for blocks. What do I tell them? Marcus closed his eyes, seeing through the network sensors. The Devourers were accelerating. They knew something was waking. They were rushing to stop it. Tell them the truth. Tell them their ancestors saved the galaxy once by becoming something new. Now we have to save it by remembering we're not meant to rule alone. The genetic data from Earth began flooding into the network. The system analyzed each sample, finding fragments of progenitor code scattered through humanity's DNA like pieces of an ancient puzzle. No single human carried the complete pattern anymore. Evolution had distributed it across the entire species. Marcus felt the network hesitating. This wasn't how it was designed to work. It needed certainty, a single clear authorization. But humanity offered something different, something the progenitors had chosen when they planted their seed on Earth billions of years ago. Trust in collective action over individual power. "It's working," the Guardian said. And for the first time, Marcus heard something like wonder in the ancient entity's voice. The network is accepting distributed authorization. It's recognizing humanity as a whole. Throughout the galaxy, ancient installations came online. Weapons that could fold space, shields that existed in multiple dimensions, detection systems that could track the devourers through the gaps in reality. The defense network stretched across hundreds of thousands of light years, and all of it responded to the combined genetic signature of 3 million humans volunteering their DNA. Marcus felt the activation burning through him. The progenitor genes were fulfilling their purpose, broadcasting the authorization codes, then breaking down. The pain was incredible, but he held on. He had to see this through. The devourers are retreating. Speaker Ven's voice bubbled with disbelief. The network is pushing them back toward the galactic rim. On the displays, Marcus watched darkness being driven away by pulses of ancient energy. The devourers fought, but the defense network was designed specifically to counter them. Reality stabilized. Space repaired itself. The hungry darkness was forced back into the empty spaces between the spiral arms. Then it was over. The devourers disappeared beyond the galaxy's edge, retreating to wait and plan. The network remained active, standing guard. Marcus collapsed forward on the throne, gasping. The pain faded, leaving him feeling strangely hollow. Empty. The Guardian was right. The progenitor genes had burned themselves out. He was just human now. Just Marcus. "Casualties?" he managed to ask. "Minimal." Elder Thas replied quietly. "You activated the network in time. The evacuation centers were protected. You saved billions of lives, Commander Kane." Marcus slowly stood, his legs shaking. Through the chamber's viewports, he could see Viridian Prime intact, ships returning to dock, life continuing. The Guardian approached him, moving with care. "The network will remain active, but it will need maintenance. Training. Humanity must learn to manage what your ancestors created." "We'll need help," Marcus said, looking at Elder Thask and the other council members. "From everyone. This isn't something one species should control alone." That's not why the progenitors chose Earth. They didn't want gods. They wanted children who would learn to share. Harmonizer chimed softly. "The Hall of Bloodlines will need a new purpose." "Yes," Marcus agreed. "A place to remember where we all came from, and to plan where we're going together." 6 months later, Marcus stood on a hillside outside Sydney, looking at the memorial humanity had built. It marked the place where the progenitor seed had first taken root in Earth's ancient oceans. Millions visited it every day. A young girl approached, holding her mother's hand. "Are you Commander Kane, the one who talked to the Guardian?" Marcus smiled. "I am. My teacher says you're the last progenitor." "What does that mean?" Marcus knelt down to her level. "It means we're the first of something new. It means we don't have to be what came before. We get to choose what comes next." The girl thought about this seriously. "That sounds hard." "It is," Marcus admitted, "but we don't have to do it alone." Above them, the sky filled with ships from 43 different species, arriving for the first meeting of the new Galactic Council. Not a hierarchy of genetic worth, but a partnership of equals, all children of the same ancient ancestors, all responsible for the same shared future. The Hall of Bloodlines had been renamed the Hall of Legacy. Its doors stood open to everyone. Marcus watched the ships descend and felt something the progenitors had never known in their final days. Hope.